Hi everyone, Coach Barry here. There's a big occasion going on tonight. I don't mean the U.S. election. AFC Wimbledon move into their new ground today. The new plow lane, as it were. So the story is, and this is a rough version, kind of help you out a little bit before we get into the actual interview I did back in 2019 on my former podcast. AFC Wimbledon are a Phoenix club. They are the reincarnation of Wimbledon FC, effectively. Wimbledon FC was moved in 2002 to a town called Milton Keynes, about 60 miles to the north of Wimbledon. And in England, that just doesn't happen. Here in the U.S., no one bats an eye when you when you move a franchise. In there, you do not move a football club. You simply don't. The club either goes under if it's struggling, it stays up for various reasons. Whether someone buys it, the influx of money to save a dying club might help it. But you don't move it. Wimbledon were moved. And fans were then moved, no pun intended, to start their own football club. And 9 years later, they were back in the Football League. At a time from the 9th or 10th year, I can't remember exactly which one. But starting from the bottom of the English football and working their way up into the Football League, the top 4 leagues in England, professional leagues. That is some achievement to happen in 9 years' time. So as I mentioned, I did this interview on a podcast I had back in 2019. It was called the Luke's Look Podcast, and I interviewed a guy named Kevin Borras. He's a member of the 9 Years Podcast, an AFC Wimbledon audio fanzine. Fanzines are fan magazines, essentially. There are ways for fans to show their opinions and support of the club in a non-official club forum or way. So Wimbledon, instead of having a published fanzine as in on paper or online, simply do an audio fanzine, a podcast every week. And Kevin was so gracious enough to join me, and I am forever grateful that he did it. So we'll cover the history of the football club, the new stadium, and we'll cover a lot of other things in between there. It's going to be about an hour or so, but I did want to tell this story. And I'm really glad that I have the ability to take the audio from that and put it here for you to hear and see on this channel. So without further ado, this is the story of AFC Wimbledon as told by Kevin Borras of 9 Years Podcast, here on Coach Barry Sports Stories. I'm joined by Kevin Borras, a member of the 9 Years Podcast team, and I think it's fair to say avid AFC Wimbledon fan. Would that seem fair to you?
Yeah, no, I like that. That's good. That's a good description. Yeah, avid is good. Not ardent and avid at the same time.
All right, I like that. So, Kevin, when most people in the U.S. think Wimbledon, they think of the tennis championships, and that might be more than fair. But for those of us who follow the beautiful game, there are more clubs than just the ones in the Premier League. Even though I have my own favorite Premier League club, I love the lower leagues as well. Particularly AFC Wimbledon. This story, when I first heard about it, jumped out at me. But this is not the first club in Wimbledon. Can you go back to the original Wimbledon FC, if you would, please?
It's an unusual story twice. And it's the kind of thing that if you were writing a script for a TV show or a film about how a football club can, unite the community and things go wrong with it and start again, you wouldn't get very far with it because it's ridiculous and far-fetched. But it's actually happened twice to us, and I've been there for the long haul. My first Wimbledon game was in 1977, which I realise is about 20 years before you were born. But yeah, I started going in the 70s. So Wimbledon Football Club was originally formed in 1889 as Wimbledon Old Centrals, and the original idea of the team was it was a team of school teachers because there's Wimbledon Old Central School, and that was 1889. So they worked their way up from pretty much park football in the early part of the 20th century, and then joined what was in the Athenian League, which is really low down. So when we restarted in 2002, that was the level that Wimbledon were at in the 1920s. So you had Athenian League, eventually working their way up through the war years to the Isthmian League, which is sort of 4 levels below the Football League. And then by that point, the early 60s, they were kind of a bit of a powerhouse of non-league football. In those days, non-league football there was only really three leagues. There's the Northern Leagues and then the Southern League and the Isthmian League. There was no conference. There was no Conference South, Conference North. You had to battle your way through. And eventually, in the 50s and 60s, the team that finished top of the Northern League or the Southern League had to go up for election to the Football League against the four teams who finished bottom of the Football League. And pretty much it was an old school kind of network where the teams very, very, very rarely got in. So the teams, it was normally Halifax, Rochdale, Crewe and Southport. It was pretty much always those four, and they always got in. And every now and again, every 10, 15 years, a new team would get in. Cambridge got in one year. There's some other teams that managed to make it, but pretty much it was a closed shop. And the non-league teams, like Runcorn and Gainsborough and Wimbledon did it, Bath City, quite a few teams who really should have been in the Football League were never voted in. And then we got in 1977, having won the Southern League several years. Well, I think we won it 4 years out of 5 in the early 70s. And what really propelled us to public notice was the FA Cup run in 74-75, when we were at the time top of the Southern League. Pretty much, if you imagine the top of the conference, if you like. So Billericay or whoever. And then we managed to win 1-0 away at Burnley, who at that point was 6th in the old First Division. So they were the 6th best team in England, and we won 1-0 away. The first time a non-league team had ever won away at a top division club. Only happened twice since. 86, Birmingham lost to Altrincham. And I think 2.5, 3 years ago, Lincoln won at Burnley. Only been done 3 times. At Burnley, they'd done it twice. And that kind of propelled us into public conscience. And then after beating Burnley, we played Leeds United, who were pretty much the best team in Europe at the time. Dirtiest team in Europe, also the best team in Europe, pretty much. And we managed to draw at Ellen Road, thanks to an amazing penalty save by Dickie Guy, who's still now one of our presidents. And then we lost in the replay 1-0 to an own goal. So, which we played at Crystal Palace's ground, ironically. So that was the kind of what pretty much propelled Wimbledon into football sort of parlance. People knew about us, and it wasn't just a tennis. And by that point, the Wombles TV series was kind of popular, and people knew about it from that. So we actually adopted a Womble as our mascot. Long story about the Wombles. Can't go into that. We can't talk about them because it's copyright issues. However, that's kind of how the story, again, I've kind of potted it. I've potted 130 years into 2.5 minutes. But that's basically how Wimbledon's original football club came into being. And I always say that I support Wimbledon's football club, ''S, because you can argue, are we the same club as before? In my opinion, yes. But people say, no, we're not, because we didn't win the FA Cup. Wimbledon did, and they don't exist. However, I support Wimbledon's football club, and that's been the case for 42 years.
Very well. I have to admit, one of the big things that brought me to Wimbledon was I'm an Everton fan as well. And that was the first club I ever fell in love with in terms of in this game. So once you get your first club, I don't think you can ever really go back.
Agree.
But they beat Liverpool in the 1988 FA Cup final.
Yep.
The Crazy Gang. I remember hearing about that, and that's one of the things. When you beat Liverpool, you're automatically endeared to my heart. Can you tell me a little bit about the Crazy Gang?
Well, it was a strange time because we got elected to the Football League in 1977. Managed to bounce around between the old 4th Division and the old 3rd Division, now League 2 and League 1 for most of that, for the first few years, up to 83. We went up and down pretty much every year, and then managed to get promoted again out of the old 3rd Division. So in 1984, so 84-85 season and 85-86 we were in Division 2, and now the Championship. I managed to get out of that by finishing 3rd, incredibly, that year. And then we were in what is now the Premiership with the smallest ground. I mean, it's the smallest ground ever to hold top level football. However, they did it somehow with players that were being paid less than 4th Division wages. So you had players playing in what wasn't now the Premiership on £150 a week, when some of the top players are earning double-figure thousands. Obviously, it's $500,000 these days, but in those days it was incredible. So we did it with players who had left other clubs, been given free transfers, and you wouldn't really pick any of those players necessarily individually as star players, but it was that team ethic, and it was the spirit of, well, okay, we're a bit of a motley crew of discards from other clubs, but we're going to, we can't be beaten. And then Wimbledon were not beaten until the final whistle went. So obviously, as we say, football's played in the mind. It was massively played in the mind in those days, and they went out onto the pitch thinking they're unbeatable. And if they're going to be beaten, they've really got to be properly beaten and worked hard against. They're going to be beaten in all aspects of the game. Didn't happen that often. So you're looking at it was just like a band of brothers kind of thing. It's kind of cliched, but that's what it was. So you look at some of the quality of some of those players in the Premier League, probably weren't as good as some of the players we've got now, technically. But they had that never say die attitude. And the players have come from non-league and proved themselves, and players have been let go by Premier League teams and gone back into non-league, and we drag them out of non-league, like Vinnie Jones, who, in talent-wise, is not the best footballer in the world, but my God, he managed to make the best out of his talents. If you think of a wasted talent in football, you can name anyone. Look at, let's say, Mario Balotelli. Not really made the most of his career. But Vinnie Jones was massively less talented than him. He's done brilliantly out of it. Played in the Premiership, played international football, household name. It's those kind of things that made people sort of sit up and take notice of our team. They're thinking, well, how have they managed to get these people? Where have they come from? And then we ended up, in those days, we sold those players for a profit. So we get a player like Nigel Winterburn, let go by Oxford, let go by Birmingham, about to give up football, go to non-league and become an accountant. We pick him up. Within 4 years, he joins Arsenal, plays for England. And it's just that kind of story that happened time and time again. So the crazy gang ethic was, although some of the antics they got up to, not necessarily overly pleasant, it was just more of an attitude thing. And then just refusing to be beaten. And it's just like it's a band of brothers. If you ever watched the TV program Band of Brothers, that's what it was, but on a football pitch and not a battlefield.
I'm not much for comparisons, but when you were talking about the way the team was constructed, it almost seems in comparison to Leicester City when they won the league a few years ago. Is that fair?
Not really, only because Leicester were compiling players who they only bought for 3 or 4 million. And our team in those days was largely free transfers. I mean, when we were in the Premier League, well, the old First Division, our record transfer fee was £125,000. That stood for years. And then previous one before that was £40,000 in March 1979. So that stood for 7 years. So we actually get into the old Championship with the record signing of 40,000. We probably didn't have more than 10 or 15 players who'd ever bought for actual money. Even, it's the case now. Our record signing is, we believe, in the 70s or £80,000 mark. And we're in a league where Sunderland paid £4 million for a substitute. It's the same thing again. That's why the comparisons between the old Wimbledon and the new Wimbledon is still valid, because that we're up against it again. And what we did by going from non-league to let's call it Premier League for this podcast in 9 years will be absolutely impossible now, because the money's just so different. You've got players in the Premiership on £400,000 a week. We haven't spent £400,000 on players ever. In this guys, obviously we did in the old days with players like John Hartson costing £7 million, and no one really knew where that money came from. So that's the thing. It's the accountability as well. We know as a fan-owned club, we'll talk about how we've managed to do that, but we know where the money, normally, you've got to know where the money's coming from and where it's going. In the old days, you had no idea how we could afford £7 million on a player. Just was impossible. Now we know that it's impossible. So we just don't, it's not a thought.
That's fair. One more thing on the crazy game, just for viewers and for listeners in the United States. There's an NBCSN pundit, Robbie Earl, is the one of the studio men with Rebecca Lowe as the presenter, and either Kyle Martino or Robbie Musto in the studio. Robbie Earl, he was part of the crazy gang, wasn't he?
Well, that's a good question. He was not really part of that ethic. No, he was part of the team. He joined us in 1991 from Port Vale, one of our best players ever, to be honest. Was a great player. But no, because the original Crazy Gang, you're looking at the early 80s, they weren't called the Crazy Gang then. It wasn't until 93 that they actually copyrighted it with a logo and actually had to. Our kit was manufactured by inverted commas the Crazy Gang in the early 90s. But it's people like Alan Cork, Steve Galliers, Wally Downs, Paul Fishenden, those kind of players that are to us sort of the heroes that got us out of lower league football into the Premier League. That was the actual Crazy Gang. Wally Downs obviously is our manager now, so it's kind of come full circle. Robbie Earle was a much less of a that's personality-wise. No, you look at someone like Laurie Sanchez, called the winning goal in the cup final. Again, not a member of that Crazy Gang because he just didn't like it. It wasn't his kind of thing. He's not into banter or cutting up people's trousers or letting their tyres down or dumping them in the puddle or setting fire to their new bag. Laurie Sanchez is much more sort of educated literally than that. Not his thing. Robbie Earle didn't really fit into that either, but it didn't really matter because he was the best player we had. So, but that's the other thing, that you look at those players in those days and you look at exactly how they managed to get a team together that was actually capable of taking on Man United and Liverpool and Arsenal, beating them. Half those players didn't get on. I mean, John Fashanu and Laurie Sanchez probably haven't spoken since whoever left first in 1994. They did not get on at all. Hated each other. There's a lot of unpleasant stuff going on. I spoke to Ian Holloway, the former QPR manager. He played for us in the one season last week, and he hated it. Absolutely hated it. He didn't like being bullied. And it was basically, if you couldn't take being bullied and having your clothes cut up and your tyres let down, then you just didn't fit in. And he didn't. He didn't like it. So he was shipped out on loan, never came back. But he says that being a Wimbledon player in 1985 turned him into a man. He was 23 at the time, never left home before, completely changed his personality and his character because he had to. If you didn't fit in, you were just cast aside. And it's the making of you, or it can destroy you. I think it would destroy me, personally. But some of those people just thrived off it, and they still do. Wally Downs is still like that. He's still very, very confrontational and will not let you get away with anything. He's very, very... This is unfortunate. Given the choice of Neil Ardley or Wally Downs to manage my team, Wally Downs wins. If I want to go out for a cup of tea with one of them, Neil Ardley every time. But that's not what it's about. It's about winning and staying up.
This was my first season as a Don's Trust member. I bought my membership in March.
Good.
And I remember when I knew that Wally had taken over, but I didn't know a whole lot about him. But I remember that charge to stay up on the final day. That was I followed Wimbledon for a while, but I just got able to actually buy a Don's Trust membership. So I remember when Neil Ardley was manager, and I'm thinking that they would have gone down had Neil stayed. And I don't mean to say bad about him because I don't know him personally, but just looking at how things were going, and we'll get to that final day. I'm culminating to that, but when you mentioned Wally and Neil, I have to go there.
Yes, I would agree with you. It's just we had no momentum as a team, as a club, off the pitch, on the pitch. And that's why you mentioned the Don's Trust. With the Don's Trust elections last year, for the first time for a long time, there was more than... Well, there was candidates up against the existing candidates previously unelected or unopposed. Delete that, unopposed. People got in because there was 4 places up for grabs and there was 4 people standing. So they win. This time, or last year in November, there was 11 candidates for 4 places. And the 4 candidates that won were all new people. They had been on the board before. So the 4 existing members sadly lost their places. So that honestly reflected what was going on the pitch. Had we been 5th at that point, I don't think, I'm not saying they wouldn't have got in, the 4 that got in at all, because that's not fair. But I think it would have been a bit different because people were very, very, what's the word? They're kind of disillusioned with how things are going on the pitch and off the pitch, all culminating in infighting, not physical, but infighting amongst the fans and whether people wanted Neil to stay or Neil to go, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. I'm not going through it again, but it was a pretty unpleasant time for the club and the fans. And Wally just came in and just changed it. Whether anybody else could have done that, I don't know, but it was definitely that new manager thing. I'm thinking, well, this is different. It was just better. And I don't think we would have stayed up had Neil stayed, because he joined Notts County and they went down, sadly. So he didn't have a great year. He almost took 2 clubs down in the same season, which is pretty unfortunate. But Wally is just...
difficult to do.
It's some kind of... It's not a great thing on your CV, but it's an achievement. But Wally is very, very... There's no grey area with him. You either love him or you hate him. And at the moment, people love him because he kept us up. He's an unusual character in the fact that he's has some opinions that people don't necessarily agree with, but do you care? Because he kept us up. So, I think I'm prepared to gloss over the shortcomings of his social media campaign or his social media output and some of his other views and just think, well, he kept us up. So
It is a results business after all.
absolutely.
Let's move on. Let's go back to the story of how we got to the final day of last season. The biggest next thing, at least from what I understand, is the ground share with Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park, and how we got to there, and then eventually to where I'm going with the original club being moved to Milton Keynes.
Well, at that point, there was a couple of very well-known reports. I think one was called the Taylor Report that had suggested after the Bradford fire in 1985, and then the Liverpool Hazel disaster also in 1985, and then the Hillsborough disaster in 89. You were looking at our ground of Plough Lane being unsuitable for football, let alone Premier League football. So you look at the grounds. You go to look at Tottenham's new ground. That was you played the same sport there that you played at Plough Lane in the same division. It just wasn't possible. So 1985 we closed the South Stand, which was made of wood, and if you look down, I used to sit in the South Stand. If you look down the South Stand through the gaps, you just see piles and piles of rubbish, people smoking and putting their cigarettes down the gap in a wooden stand with rubbish underneath. It was just going to, Bradford would happen all over again. That's what happened to Bradford. Cigarette between the gaps in the floor, wooden stand. Unfortunately, there's a recipe for disaster. So the Taylor Report had suggested that we would be thrown out of the league. We'd have to move ground. No chance of moving ground. The only option by 1991 was share with Crystal Palace. And it was many, many people hated that idea. A lot of people stopped going. I know quite a few people who stopped going in 1991 and didn't go again until 2002 when AFC Wimbledon started. I actually did the opposite. I moved to nearer Crystal Palace, so it was easy for me to get to. So we shared Crystal Palace from 1991 as the only option. The club dies, the club gets moved out of the league, gets relegated or whatever, or you ground share. And it was a lesser of many, many evils. Handy for me because I lived there, but it divided people again, and we stayed there. We did all right. We stayed up until 2000. We had 9 seasons at Selhurst Park staying up. Did quite well in some of them, but the home record was pretty poor. Crystal Palace's home record was equally poor during that time as well. So not quite sure what that was about. But there was one season, I think it was 89-90. We won 3 home games. They won 1 in the whole season. So out of, I think it was 38 home games. They've even been 40 home games. That was the seasons. The numbers changed. I think there was 4 wins. That's completely coincidental. But so we stayed there for 9 years as a Premiership team. And it alienated people. The rivalry with Crystal Palace kind of heated up a bit. But largely, it was the only way we could have stayed there. And we ended up playing Man United, Liverpool, crowd of 30,000, fantastic, 28,000 away fans. But, it was an option, and it was the only option we had. So by the time we went down in 2000, we'd had 3 or 4 years of protests because we knew that the club there was moves ahead, or moves afoot, to transfer the club to Dublin, build a stadium in Dublin. I spent a week in Dublin for a football magazine called 442, basically chasing after the people who were involved in this, knowing that the owner, Sam Hammam, had been involved in it. And I was basically about a step behind them all, but I was reporting on that, finding out exactly what was going on. I did some work for the Irish Independent newspaper as well at the time, just trying to find out whether this was ever going to happen. It turned out it was illegal because you couldn't pay them in pounds. Anyway, long story. But financially, the tiny, tiny loophole stopped that. And then there was reports of moving to Norway, which is ridiculous. And then the Milton Keynes thing started up. And then it's then when you start thinking, well, that's actually going to be feasible because there's land. It's a new town, roughly. It made it very difficult. You still there? Oh, good. Sorry, yes. I was having a strange beeping in my ear. Sorry, I'm going to have to cut that. Sorry. And Milton Keynes thing started to become feasible. So by 2000, after we've had 3 years of protest about not going to Dublin, and then the MK No Way campaign started up, it started to think, then we got relegated, didn't come even close to getting back in the playoffs for those 2 seasons. And then 2002, it was announced we were going to Milton Keynes, 28th of May 2002. A date any Wimbledon fan will never ever forget. But it became inevitable because the crowds were getting smaller and smaller. We played Sheffield United in a live TV game in 2001, and the attendance was just over 2,000, which actually was more than the TV audience, which is the first time ever in football history that the recorded TV audience was smaller than the audience that are actually at the game. But it was then you start to think, this is it, it's all over. And you start to think, well, what will we do now? If it goes under, what happens? And it was the only way we could survive was by starting again. And then the majority, 99% of fans was, are we going to go to Milton Keynes? No. You don't follow. I know in America it's different. You have sport franchising, and if you're an Arizona Cardinals fan, you can wake up tomorrow and find out next year they're going to be playing in, I don't know, in Manchester or Connecticut, and then all of a sudden you're the Connecticut Cardinals, which actually sounds better, but it's a thing. I know a lot of American people. I work a lot in the States, and sport franchising is something that you just have to live with. And I've had it I have friends in Alabama, a huge state, no professional sports teams. But one day you might get one, but you might have to nick it from Las Vegas, or you might have to steal it from Miami. The Miami Marlins might end up being the Birmingham Marlins. Who knows? But in an English sport, just doesn't happen. And it was allowed to happen, and it was an absolute disgrace. It should still never happen, and I hope nobody ever has to go through that again. No other fans of a Plymouth or Exeter end up becoming Norwich, Argyle, or whatever. The whole thing was a complete horror show from start to finish. But what we got out of it, I wouldn't swap for the world now.
Quick detour, you mentioned franchising. There's been rumors of the NFL putting a team in London, and there are several. The Jacksonville Jaguars, I keep thinking of the irony to where you move a franchise to a country where that simply does not happen. That's just the irony of that aside. Let's talk about when the club was eventually moved to Milton Keynes and was starting up in 2002. What happened on Wimbledon Common?
Well, by that point, 4 people had got together. Mark and Chris and Ivor and Trevor had got together in a pub in Wimbledon and said, right, what do we do now? I ain't going to Milton Keynes, and no one's going to Milton Keynes. We want to start again. And the idea was they put together an idea to start again. We don't know what league we'd ever get into, but let's start again. Let's start a new football team in Wimbledon, playing in blue and yellow, with the word Wimbledon in the title, in the name, and see where we get. And the idea really was to start on a Sunday, maybe start Sunday league, just have a Wimbledon team playing at local level, but it was our team, and we'd have a good few hundred people would probably come and watch. And the only way to get players involved at that point was to hold trials, and the idea was we'd hold trials at Wimbledon Common, just off the A3, dual carriageway. You don't need to know that in America, but it's a large road. It goes from Portsmouth to London, but our old training ground was there, and trials were held in Wimbledon Common, and probably thought maybe 100 people would turn up, maybe less. About that. And I believe over 600 people turned up, including current players of good quality non-league clubs. And from that, it was just, we thought, well, that's something, that's a good start. And then we kind of mobilised into, right, there are some accountants involved in our fan fan base. There were journalists. There was people who could help us. And within weeks, we'd actually got a name, and then badge, and then colours, and a kit, and then fans said, well, I'll be the kit manufacturer, I'll be the kit sponsor, and then obviously a lot of work went into it. I'm surmising and shortening the process massively, but fans got involved, fans of fans, friends of fans got involved, and all of a sudden there was a bona fide football club, and the idea was, well, let's try and get into the Ryman League, what was obviously the old Isthmian League, where we came from originally in the 60s. And that got voted out, sadly. And we know who. We're not going to go into that. But the original idea in 2002, when Wimbledon moved to Milton Keynes, was that the idea was that it would not be in the wider interests of football for the club to keep going. So the idea was move to Milton Keynes, start again, change the name, and that was what was put forward, and that was approved. So we had that massive kick in the teeth, and then the Isthmian League, I shan't name the person, or he was called Alan Turvey, decided no, he had the casting vote. Wimbledon didn't deserve a place in the Ryman League because it would upset too many other Ryman League clubs having 3,000 Wimbledon fans turning up. So the likes of Tooting and Mitcham and Carshalton and Sutton apparently didn't like the idea. I'm not too sure that's true. And then I didn't play a massive part in this at all, really, but my brother-in-law at the time was the goalkeeping coach at Merstham, who were in the Combined Counties League, and it was suddenly decided, well, how about Combined Counties League? Let's give them a go. Combined Counties League were approached, would you like a Wimbledon team in your league? And they went, oh, yes, please. And that was the end of that. And it was within days we got accepted to the Seagrave Haulage Combined Counties League. So within 2 years, we'd gone from seeing our team play at Old Trafford and Anfield and Stamford Bridge and Villa Park, and here we were playing in roped-off parks in the Combined Counties League with teams like Sandhurst Town and Cove and Godalming Town, and it was great. It was one of those surreal experiences of watching your team play at Sandhurst Town's ground, where there was 2 parks. There was 2 other games going on elsewhere as well, in the grounds, tiny little ground. We had to have people stood on hay bales so they could see. And we had 3,000 fans turn up, and normally their average attendance was 42, and so we just kind of swamped all these teams, but with affection. They still hold us in affection now. You team that Merstons of my brother-in-law's old team, they built a brand new clubhouse and resurfaced the pitch entirely from the funds that we brought with us. We drank them out of house and home. We ate all their sandwiches. It was great. It was just a completely different way to watch football, and you just enjoy it. And there was no cameras, there was no pressure, there was no diving, there was no massive sponsorship, there was no foreign players. With respect to foreign players, it was just football at its grassroots level. And then bizarrely, within 9 years, we were in the Football League again.
I was about to bring that up.
It's still one of those ridiculous stories. The first time going from Southern League to Premier League in 9 years was stupid and just ridiculous. And winning the FA Cup 11 years after being in a non-league team is ridiculous. And we've done it again. It's crazy. So to go from formation to Football League in 9 years was just madness. And nobody expected it. People didn't really want it. Some people didn't really want that. I know fans who, once we got to Football League, stopped going because it was too much again. It was just, they enjoyed the non-league stuff. They enjoyed going, being welcomed at grounds, and they didn't like the idea of being, the underdog again, starting all over again. But for me, that was our rightful place. We got our rightful place back. We had our Football League place stolen in 2002, and we got it back.
And now, of course, the club is playing in League One, stayed up by the skin of their teeth last season. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Great Escape.
Sorry, you went dead
last season. Let's kind of go into that.
Do you want to talk about the last day of the season?
Yes, because I have my own story about that, and it's far removed from a football ground, but I'd like to hear what yours was.
Well, we decided, the 11 of us on the podcast team and family members, that we would hire a minibus and drive up, because I just don't think we could stand the tension of driving up on our own. Didn't want to handle the tension of going up on the coach. So we got a minibus together. So we had the 9 Years podcast fun bus, which we hired. Our podcast team member, Chris Draper, was the only one of us who was legally allowed to drive it, which is quite funny that I wasn't. I have a medical issue, so I can't drive more than 4 people. Anyway, and there were other people who were too young, and then people said, I don't fancy driving all the way out there and driving again. What if we lose? No, we don't think about losing. Let's just hire the minibus. Let's just go and enjoy the day. And I say enjoy. It's a very strange thing, because you think, 5 minutes to go. We were in Bradford. We were watching probably one of the worst football matches in history. Terrible game of football. And we knew that the other teams around us were winning. Southend was somehow beating Sunderland. Plymouth were winning. Everyone was winning around us. We just thought, if we lose this, even 1-0, we're down. So we'd go down on goal difference. And we had at one point in the season, we had the worst goal difference in League One. We managed to stay up on goal difference by virtue of 1 goal. And then Bradford get a corner from a mistake. And you just see our captain, Will Nightingale, slice the ball at the near post. That goes in, we're relegated. And it was saved. Aaron Ramsdale saved it. He pretty much saved us that from January. That 20-year-old boy from Sheffield who was playing on loan from Bournemouth kept us up. I wouldn't say single-handed, but what a massive... I can't think of any player that's had that much of an influence on our season ever. It's quite extraordinary. And he really got it, the whole thing. He just got the whole idea of what we were doing and bought into it. I think he wanted to come back, but he's probably Bournemouth's number 2 keeper this year. He deserves to be. He'll play for England one day. I'm happy to put that on a recorded podcast that people are going to listen to. Aaron Ramsdale will play for England one day. And that's so you can hold that against me. 10 years' time, listen back when he's an England international. I said it here. Anyway, but you just think the tension of that last 10 minutes was just horrible, absolutely palpable. And you think it was just a horrible thing to do, a horrible thing to put yourself through. That's our hobby. We paid money to get in. We paid petrol money. We hired a bus. We drove 600 miles there and back. And we did it for fun. That's what we do for our enjoyment. It was ridiculous. And that game was the nearest game, Bradford's last game of the season. So it was the game they celebrate or commemorate, if you like, commemorate the Bradford fire from May 1985. And you just think that's horrible. That's torture. The ground burns down. 57 people die. And you're putting yourself through this for fun. And it's really odd to compare the horror we were feeling to the actual horror of the situation those people were in 34 years before. But it was one of the most unenjoyable days of my life. At the same time, we thoroughly enjoyed it because we stayed up. Terrible game of football. We stay up by 1 goal. And it was just one of those things that you just think, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself? I could just be at home. Or I could be watching cricket, or I could be doing something else. I could be at the shops. I could do something else in my life. But this is what I've chosen to do, to put myself through this torturous 4 or 5 hours. And the journey home, we didn't celebrate, really. A couple of people had some alcoholic beverages on the way home, but we just kind of sat there looking out the window thinking, we've done it. How have we done this? It wasn't. People talk about the Great Escape. It's kind of a nice epithet, and it was. Because in March, we were not, end of February, we were 10 points adrift. And I was done. I just thought, well, I said in the podcast, I said in the radio show, we're relegated. I'm looking next season at how do I get to Morecambe? I don't live that far from Crawley. Yeah, it's all right. We'll look at maybe going down isn't a bad thing. Keep some of that squad together and enjoy football again, because those last 2 seasons haven't been hugely fun. To be honest, the football on offer wasn't great. We were the lowest scorers last season. The attacking football wasn't great. It was just a bit difficult to watch. This again is what you do for fun. But yeah, wouldn't swap it now. We stayed up, and it was extraordinary. I think this season we are a bit of our first 11, our first choice team is slightly stronger. I don't think the squad is though. So we could be having this all over again, but you wouldn't swap it because this is what you do. This is the fun. This is what gets you out. I've had a pretty tough year on a personal front. Won't go into why, but I have. And the prospect of going with my friends to football matches all over the country on a Saturday afternoon or Tuesday evening is what's kept me going. And that's the case for a lot of people. You put your personal problems aside and you just go on a Saturday afternoon or Tuesday evening and watch, completely unable to change anything, completely helpless, and that's kind of helps you get through the fact that you can't change anything. I could look back on the issues I've had this year. I could probably have changed some of them, or I could have been a different person and not got into those situations. However, at football, you just cast all your problems aside and watch 11 total strangers kick a ball around a pitch. And that's basically where you end up enjoying yourself. And that's where you kind of lose all the problems. And for an hour and a half plus half time, you're just completely helpless and put yourself in that situation and just watch it unfold and try and enjoy it. And that's where I am now.
That's the beauty of the game. I've got several things going on, like you. I'm not going to get into that for 2 reasons. One, you don't have a reason to care. 2, no one else does. But I'll tell you my final day story, and then we'll move on to the last 2 questions I have. The local town I'm in had a World War II festival that one of my best friends, who's now my girlfriend, was part of the planning committee. And she said, you should come up here. And I'm a history buff. And I said, sure, I'll go. But I knew the Wimbledon game was on that day. That game started at 12:30 p.m. here. Yeah. And so I told my friend I'd be up there at 11:30. I was hoping I'd get back before kickoff. That didn't happen. I was leaving the festival in the last 3 minutes of the match. I didn't have iFollow. I didn't have anyway. I had a scores app. That's what I had. And I looked at the League One scores and I went, okay, I know what happens here. And I looked at that score. It was 0-0. And I'm thinking, oh boy, here it goes. And I got in my car and I was going back to my house. I got stopped at a stoplight when all of the games were at full time. And I looked at the table and I went, we're safe. My God, we're safe. And unlike you, I actually celebrated. I chanted, "We are staying up." Say, "We are staying up." And AFC Wimbledon in my car on the way back to my house. I was absolutely thrilled, and it's amazing what this sport can do to you. It's absolutely amazing.
I'm sure other sports do. I also like cricket. Now, I understand America hasn't really got cricket. I am going to be in Florida in September. I'm going to a baseball game. I'm going to the Tampa Bay Rays, is it, against the Red Sox? I don't care. I'm sorry, I don't get baseball. My 18-year-old son loves baseball. He loves all the statistics, and he's very, very understanding of the whole game. You appreciate. I don't want to go. I don't get it, but I do understand that it's a sport people love, and American football the same. Don't really get it. But cricket is my other thing, and even England won the Cricket World Cup a couple of weeks ago, and I was really pleased. Right, I celebrated, but within 15 minutes of the game ending and us lifting the trophy, I was like, okay, that's good, and I moved on. But football affects me. In 2010, I was asked, and I was on a radio and TV show, and I was asked, what would I swap from my club's success, for England to win the 2010 Soccer World Cup? And I said, a goalless draw that meant nothing? And I said, no. What we mean is, would you give up like promotion for England to win the World Cup? I said, no, I get the question. My answer is a goalless draw that means nothing. I'd give up a point that meant nothing. He said, so you would rather Wimbledon win a meaningless league match than England to win the World Cup? And I said, oh yeah. And they didn't use me in the end because they thought I sounded unpatriotic. I said, no, I genuinely mean. I don't. My support of the England national team is tiny. If England won the World Cup last year, so we beat France in the final, let's say, within half an hour of that game ending, I'd be making tea or doing the washing up or whatever, or reading a book or watching TV or whatever. I would be over it. But if we get a good draw, that means we get a point in March, I'm still pleased with that 4 or 5 days later. That's what it means to me. Anyway,
I'm with Kevin Borras, team member of the 9 Years podcast, of an AFC Wimbledon podcast. And Kevin, one of the first things that popped out to my mind when I first heard about the AFC Wimbledon story is that the club are owned by the supporters. And how does that work?
It's interesting because you'd think as a model, it's a brilliant idea, but there's only us, Wycombe Wanderers and Exeter City that are owned by fans. And then you can add Barcelona into that because they're also fan owned. But it's not a dispute, but if you look at the small print, it's not that the club is owned by the fans. It's the fact that the club is owned by the trust. So we have an organisation, as you mentioned earlier on, that you're a member of, called the Dons Trust, and that is the organisation that runs the club and owns the club. However, not all fans are Dons Trust members. Most are, but not all. And oddly, not all Dons Trust members are fans. You don't have to be. Anyone could join the Dons Trust. It's only $32, $33 of your hard-earned cash. And anyone could join. You don't have to support Wimbledon. You can support any club you like and join the Dons Trust because you're kind of investing, if you like, a very small amount of money into the club. But the way that works is that the fan ownership model was first mooted back in the early 2000s. In fact, it was talked about when we were still Wimbledon FC and still playing at Selhurst Park. So the Dons Trust is a group of, in this case, I think it's just over 3,000 fans or 3,000 people. And there is a board of 9 people who are the Dons Trust board, and they are the ones that implement the policies, make the changes, hold the meetings, run working groups. There's all kinds of working groups. As you can imagine, with the new stadium coming up, there's a stadium working group. There's a sustainability working group looking at whether we can use electric vehicle charging points and non-plastic cups and all that kind of stuff. It's all important. But basically, yeah, so those 9 people are elected by the Dons Trust members to implement what we as a fan base want. It's a good model. It works well. So those 9 people and the Don's Trust as a whole, if you like, employ the football club board. There's 2. If you ever listen to any Wimbledon podcasts or look at any of our websites or fan fan sites or whatever you like, message boards, DTB and FCB are the 2 things that pop up. So DTB is the Don's Trust board. FCB is the football club board. So that's Joe Palmer, Ivor Heller, David Charles, Mick Buckley, the people that actually run the football club as their job. The Don's Trust board, despite the fact that most of them put in 25, 30 hours a week on the Don's Trust board, it's all entirely voluntary. So our club, despite being in the same division as the likes of Ipswich Town, Sunderland, Portsmouth, are pretty much, on the whole, run by volunteers. So all the people that sell the programmes, man the turnstiles, do the Don's Trust board stuff, all that kind of policy and paperwork, and it's a lot of work. All those people are volunteers. So every season, normally the 2nd or 3rd last away game, the volunteers away game. The club pay for coaches, match tickets and a lunch, and everyone who contributes their time, huge amounts of time in some cases, to the club, they get taken on a nice trip to the away game. I don't think we've ever won one. I think we've had a couple of draws. We tend to lose that game. But if you look at the pictures on the website of the Don's Trust, of their volunteers away day, there was a huge amount of people. From the people that tend the pitch and the people that move the goalposts, not figuratively, literally move the practice posts, to the people who paint the stadium, to the people who do other stuff. I was invited this year because we did the Don's Trust board elections. We, as the 9 News podcast, we filmed interviews with 9 of the 11 candidates. The other 2 couldn't make it. And that counted as volunteering. We were giving up our time. The people who stand outside the ground selling programs, and some of those tasks I've mentioned are done by the same person. There's quite a few people who do all those things, and they give up huge amounts of their time. And in most cases, they've got full-time jobs as well and families. So you can't really underestimate just how much effort the volunteers put into running this club. So it's an unusual model, and I'm talking to one of the guys who runs a Queen's Park Rangers podcast, because they're looking at how can they change how their club is run. And so they're looking at fan ownership as a model. So I'm going to be speaking to them on their podcast soon. It just looks like it's a really obvious way of doing things, and it's fair, and it's kind of it's cooperative in the nicest possible sense of the word. And it works really well for us. But I think we are now at that level where it isn't going to work any higher than this. I don't think you can be a championship club or a premiership club and run off volunteers and supporter-owned club or trust-owned club. I think there's a glass ceiling with how practical it is, and I think we've probably reached it. And I think the new stadium is going to be the tipping point, and I think maybe fan ownership is going to have to be discussed.
Wasn't Portsmouth a fan run for a while before former Disney executive?
Yes, I shouldn't laugh at Portsmouth. Yes, Portsmouth was owned by the fans, and the fans sold out to Michael Eisner. So the fact that people have referred to it as the Mickey Mouse Club is actually quite amusing. But yeah, the Portsmouth is a completely different thing. I mean, Portsmouth were going under, and fans rescued them, which they did a good job. And then Disney took over. All the debts were gone. The fact that they still owed vast amounts of money to vast amounts of people was kind of brushed under the carpet, and it's all right now. Portsmouth fans were very, you've done a good job, Wimbledon. Well done. I think we'll run a fan ownership. We'll do that. We like that model. And then when they sold out, they were very critical of how we'd done it. And you think, so I think the relationship between us and Portsmouth as fans is not hugely positive.
Fair enough. When you mentioned that you didn't think it would go any higher, of course, they are many people's, according to what I've read, people's pick to win League One and thus win promotion to the championships. And I don't think that would have happened had they still been.
No, they wouldn't have the money. They wouldn't have the money. I mean, what we're doing now is because we're moving to the new stadium, there is a significant shortfall in finances. So we are trying to raise £7 million via a crowdfunding exercise. We're getting there. I think we've raised about 1.6 million so far, something like that. And that is obviously Wimbledon fans first. Own your club, help your club, get it off the ground, get them back to the new stadium. Because the new stadium will have one permanent stand and 3 inverted commas, semi-permanent stands to begin with and that kind of stuff. But it's now open to the public. Anybody in the UK can now purchase shares. You can invest if you wanted to. If you had the money, you can invest £1 million into our club, and that gives you huge amounts of stuff. You get a golf game with Wally Downs. You get your name on the stand. You can sponsor a urinal. You can sponsor a beer tap. You can sponsor all kinds of stuff now. But if you live in the States, sadly you can't, because you have to be UK based to do this. We've got quite a few US fans as well as yourself, people like Dan Baker in the New Jersey, I'm sure will listen to this. He would love to put some money into the club, and he can't. Not allowed under the rules of UK investment. Can't do it.
Provided my finances kick up, I'd love to, but I just now was able to get into the Don's Trust.
Yeah.
But,
there's a way around it, apparently. Donating a gift to the Don's Trust apparently is possible. But anyway, let's talk about it. Talk about that off air.
Yeah. You mentioned the new stadium. Let's talk about that, because everywhere I've heard that's kind of been the long-standing goal of the club is to get back to Plough Lane. Yeah.
And it's happening, finally. So it's obviously the ground that we used to have from 1920 something to 1991 is now gone. That's now a block of flats. So a long amount of work, huge amount of work from Eric Samuelson, ex-chief executive, and his team and the council and Galliard Homes and various other people. Have finally got to the point now where we have the stadium. If you look on the website, the stadium is starting to be built. The flats on all four corners, which of course is helping to pay for it, they're being constructed. The pitch has been marked out now. We can see where the stands are going. Buckingham Group, who are building the stadium for us, they have given a presentation in early June to the supporters to see, and you can see what it looks like. If you go onto the website, afcwimbledon.co.uk, you can see plans of the new stands and what it's going to look like, and the view and the seat colours and that kind of stuff. It doesn't look very good. It's just the fact that we are currently short financially, and that needs to be covered very quickly, or you end up going down the route of having to borrow more and more money off the banks. Not a good idea, because you've got to pay it back. Obviously, we all know loans work, but that's the thing. Yes, we can borrow the money, and yes, we can build the stands and build the stadium and have a nice new home with blue and yellow seats and a nice fan zone and all that kind of stuff, and your name on urinals and beer taps and all that kind of thing. It's great, but where's the money coming from? It's not currently there. So obviously we owned Kingsmeadow for a while. Chelsea Football Club now own Kingsmeadows, and the money they've spent on that goes towards our new stadium. That's lovely. Galliard Homes, and there's a couple of grants as well have gone in. Hence, we can't have safe standing or rail seating. It's got to be the plans that were originally put in, or we have to pay back this grant. We can't afford to pay back a grant of £1 million. So it's great. We're all looking forward to moving back. Well, I say we're all. Most people are looking forward to moving back to Plough Lane. It's on the site of the former Wimbledon Greyhound Stadium. It's where the Speedway and the Banger Racing used to be. But that stadium was decrepit in the extreme. When they knocked it down, they discovered vast amounts of asbestos, hence one of the reasons why it was delayed. And then the Mayor of London, what was Boris Johnson, now our Prime Minister, he called in the application, which meant it had to be reviewed, and basically so it knocked an extra year onto the end of the construction. So we hope to be in time for one or two pre-season friendlies in a year's time. So we should be, if all goes to plan, in that stadium in a year's time. Should.
That would be great. I've said I'm an Everton fan. They're building a new ground on the Bramley Moor Dock. And so it will be really exciting for me to have the two clubs I care the most about in new grounds. Of course, I've never known anything other than Goodison for Everton. I've never known anything other than Kingsmeadow for Wimbledon. So it would be great to, if I make it over the UK, go to an Everton match and then make my way down to Wimbledon and watch a game at Plough Lane. I would love
I don't know when the Everton ground is supposed to be built. I'm actually going to be in Liverpool for the rest of this week, but I don't know when the ground's due to be.
I think they're aiming for 2021 or 2022.
It's exciting. I've been going a long time, so by the time this stadium is built, I'll have seen us play at Plough Lane, Selhurst Park, Kingsmeadow, and Plough Lane again. So four different stadiums. But if you're less than 37 years old, you have probably not seen us play at Plough Lane.
I know for a fact.
You're in your 20s, you probably wouldn't have seen us play at Selhurst Park. So for quite a few prominent fans, even members of the Dons Trust board who are younger, much younger than me, they've only seen their club play at Kingsmeadow. So to them, Kingsmeadow is home. Because there's two members of the Dons Trust board are less, well, one's not even 30 and one's early 30s, have only seen Wimbledon play at Kingsmeadow. So for them, it's quite a sad occasion, the fact that we're leaving Kingsmeadow. And it kind of upsets them a bit, the fact that we're the older ones of us are so looking forward to leaving that ground. It's done us a good job. It's served us really, really well, and it served its purpose. But we need to move on. We cannot make money from being at Kingsmeadow because we don't earn much out of the grounds. It only holds 4,700, and all the policing aspects and all the other costs associated with running a football club. And we don't have a way of using the facilities because the facilities aren't great. You move into your own stadium that only holds 11,000. We can have concerts there. We can have conference facilities. We can do all kinds of stuff and actually earn money from it, which currently we can't do, and that's holding us back. Whether the team on the pitch actually holds us back is another matter, but that's kind of arbitrary in that business sense. So it's interesting. I'm looking forward to moving to this new ground, but a lot of people aren't because it's like moving away from home. But for me, this isn't home. It's never been. It's always been a temporary thing, with always the idea that at some point we'd move away and at some point we'd get our own ground, and that point's now. So I do understand the younger ones who think, I love Kingsmeadow. Well, I don't. Because it's too small and it's too cramped and it's a terrible view. Because I'm only 5'9", and my friends who I go with are 6'3", 6'4", and 6'5", and my now 18-year-old son is 6'3". So we stand at the back of the Rygas stand, which has one of the worst views in football anywhere. Anyway, but when you stand at the back, you're like watching the football through a letterbox. So I've not seen the far corner to my right in 17 years. Any ball that goes over 8-9 feet in the air, can't see it. So I've not seen. I see about a third of each game because I'm looking at through a very small slit. It's like watching it in widescreen through a postbox. It's not great. So I'm looking forward to seeing the entire match from a seat where I'm going to wander about looking at the view. I'm trying to get a good view of the goal and not seeing who scored because there's a bloke in front of me who's 6'4", and I'm looking at someone's back for 90 minutes. So I'm actually looking forward to a nice view.
One thing else on the stadium, and then we'll start to wrap it up. I remember hearing or reading on the Dons Trust website, excuse me, that there was talk of a museum going in somewhere at the new ground. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great.
That's one of the biggest things.
I think it's fantastic. So that was mooted again a long time ago, that there should be a museum of some kind. Obviously, we've got all the stuff that the other team in Buckinghamshire owned, they took control of, got it back. So the only thing you can be fair to that club in any way, shape or form is the fact that they've given back what's rightfully ours. So we've got the FA Cup, we've got the replica, we've got the medals, we've got all the... Basically, it was described as repatriation, which I quite liked. It's a bit of a strong word for it, but that's what it is. So, and Vinnie Jones donated his FA Cup winners medal and all that kind of stuff. But there's a group of guys, Patrick John Lynch and Stuart Young among them, and George Jones from the podcast team who's going to help curate the museum. They've put a lot of effort and a lot of their own money into buying up stuff. They search eBay, they go to program fairs and memorabilia fairs, and they find stuff all over the world. From, someone in Bulgaria had a rosette from the 1963 Amateur Cup final. They buy that and bring it, and we're going to donate it back to the club, the museum. So I think the museum's great. Again, looking at the younger people I don't mean that disrespectfully, people in their 20s and even early 30s and teens who don't really know much about our history of our club because it's not there. You go to any other football club and the history's there because they've got trophy cabinets and they've got, museums or whatever. So we were recently in Germany for the pre-season friendly. We went to Kickersoffenbach, the club we played in our second friendly. They've got a lovely fan museum, really, really well done. They've got a copy or version of every single shirt they've ever had. They've got a copy of a program. I know American sport doesn't do programs, but the match day program from every single game they've ever played since 1903. And they've got basically everything. Anything that's got Kickers Off and Back on it and has been a part of that club, they've got in this fan museum. It's fantastic. They've got sort of sliding walls. You can pull the walls back, and there's shirts and mugs and scarves and autographs and photographs from the 1910s, 1920s. Fantastic stuff. We spent ages in there. That's what we want from our club. Because we've got an amazing history. And if you like, we've actually got two amazing histories. We've got 1889, or maybe even three. We've got 1889 to 1977, when we were one of the strongest non-league clubs. And then from 77 to 2002, when we were a great story coming up from non-league into the Premier League, winning the FA Cup, would have played in Europe had it not been for the blanket ban on English clubs playing in Europe because of what happened in 1985. And then reforming, starting again in our third history. So if you like, we've got three lots of history, and all of that will be represented in the museum of the club. So I think it's a fantastic idea. So yeah, I'm absolutely all for it, and I'm looking forward to moving. And I will look at, now I'm 50, I'm looking forward to sitting down at a match. I'm not having to stand up for 90 minutes. That's just me personally being old, but it's good. And I can get to the ground by tram as well. I'm not going to drive. I can go on the tram. Marvellous. So yeah, it's all heading in a positive direction. What I would think would be the one slight downside is that we've got to be careful that we don't end up with our first league game at the new ground being against Morecambe or Crawley Town or League Two. That's what I'm saying. We need to stay in League One.
Yeah.
Must stay in League One. You get a nice, lovely friendly against Chelsea or Barcelona to open the ground. And then on Saturday afternoon, Morecambe. All respect to Morecambe. Good club. No problem with them. But that's the least glamorous football team in the country. You want it to be Sunderland or Ipswich or Charlton if they come down, or a nice home game on a Saturday afternoon, and not against a team who are also in League Two, because it just takes the edge off it. All that work can have gone down just at the wrong time.
Thank you so much for joining me. I've wanted to tell the story for a while, and I know I'm an Everton fan as well, but I really do give my support to Wimbledon. It's something I'm incredibly excited about being a part of, and as long as no one's going to judge me for supporting Everton as well, I'm fine.
No, you're fine. You're okay. One of my friends is a big Everton fan, so no, I don't mind it. I did almost get killed at Goodison Park in 1994, but that's a story for another podcast. But anyway, yeah, if you do make it to the UK, then let me know, and we'll make sure you coincide with the home game. We'll get you a ticket.
All right, will do. Thank you so much.
No problem. Cheers, Lucas. Thanks.
Hi everyone, Coach Barry here. Thanks for watching the video. Please like and subscribe, and please share if you like the video. Until next time, we'll see you later.